We've been involved in a mentorship program sponsored by Sand County Foundation. And that mentorship program means that I'm taking a few hours a month. If there's a young farmer who has a question about one aspect or another of what they're facing as farmers, I can give them, from my perspective, what I might think they might be need to look at. Mentorship is critical. If we're going to grow another generation of people who are on the land, who are invested in the ethical relationship of a complex ecology and how they are part of that, how they are stewarding that, that's critical. Full Belly Farm has been farming here for about 38 years. My wife and myself moved here back in about 1983. It's a very kind of unique agricultural valley, a lot of small land holdings here in California. Their farms haven't gotten very big, so our farm fits in here where we can grow a wide variety of things. Crops like this eggplant that you see here, melons and tomatoes, do very well here because we're very warm in the summer. We can grow vegetables nearly year-round. That means we can employ a crew year-round. We can be marketing year-round, which gives us year-round cash flow. And so we've been able to design a farm that's very stable, that's producing year-round and has something that we can offer our customer base year-round. We have about 1,200 laying hens. They're in mobile coops that we can move around. We also have sheep that are part of the farm. There are foragers. They can go into what has been a crop that we've picked, and they'll eat the residue there, they'll clean up the weeds, they'll do things that are an environmental service here. But they also provide wool and meat, and the chickens provide eggs. It was clear that to start a farm, like we did 38 years ago, and to have that farm be something that was economically viable, we had to think out of the box a little bit. So we decided we would design a farm that had diversity at its core. We probably grow 80 to 100 different crops. We decided we needed to be also cognizant of the fact that we needed a diverse marketing plan. So we market about 15% of what we grow to about 1,200 families who get a box a week in our CSA. We do 3 farmers markets a week. That's another 15% or so of our income. We also then sell directly to stores and restaurants as kind of a retail component, and then the rest goes to wholesale. We sell to wholesalers that service local regional markets. So our strategy has been focusing on diversity as a mechanism for creating stability. And in the marketplace, certainly the way we market, we have to be thinking about that as our fundamental strategy in order to survive. I grew up on a dairy farm in San Jose, which is now houses and computer companies. And my family still farms about 40 miles from here. I grew up around the technologies of that agriculture, and through the 60s and 70s, when I was becoming mindful of what's going on in agriculture, I realized it was a dead end for a lot of farmers. It was a very difficult time. We got involved in organic agriculture as a set of principles, and we've made our mistakes, and we've had some successes. And it became more and more clear that the key was in soil. The key was beneath our feet. If you have healthy soil, digesting what you're putting into it properly, you can release a tremendous amount of beneficial nutrients in the plant that resist diseases and they resist insect attacks. And as we've done this now for 38 years, we're getting better at it. I think the last 5 years have probably been the most exciting 5 years in this journey because we're now beginning to understand the complexity of soil much more intimately with good science. We're starting to look downward and realizing that if we're going to have a stable, long-term agriculture in the U.S. and around the world, we have to focus more on soil-plant interaction by feeding soil, by managing soil ecology, by managing all the things that go on in and around soils. It's a critical time. Whether you believe in climate change and global warming or not, we do have increasing CO2 levels. That's something we should be concerned about. Anytime we can take carbon from the air and put it in the soil is a far more vast reservoir of carbon than is even the tree life, all the life above the soil and into the atmosphere. It needs to go in the ground. So whether you're a conventional grower who's growing corn and soybeans in the Midwest, or whether you are a cotton grower in the South, you have to figure out ways to put that in the ground because it adds to your bottom line. From the beginning of this farm, cover crops have been one of the keystones of how we enhance fertility here. And we're learning a lot about cover crops. We tended for many years to have oats and vetch and some peas in our winter cover crop. We've now expanded that to 8 or 10 different things where we have a real mix, a much more diverse mix in each of our cover crop mixes for the different seasons. Cover crops can do any number of things. They can gather carbon. They can gather nitrogen, so any legume with connection with the rhizobium bacteria in the soil can be gathering nitrogen and fixing that so they can enrich your soil in a nitrogen sense. They can create an ecological community underneath there. And the more diversity there, the more you get diversity in your soil. So you can diversify your soil ecology with cover crops. There's good evidence that says that you'll get some increased drought tolerance by having diversity there too. Cover crops are about being actively engaged in trying to keep your ground covered and harvest as much of this energy that can come from sunlight and photosynthesis and capturing that and putting that in your soil. Every farm should be considering how they fit cover crops into their system, how they keep something green on that ground for as long as they possibly can. You have your cash crop, but you also have the window before and the window after that cash crop, where you can take advantage of moisture in the soil or 2 months or 40 days or 60 days and put something in there. When we first got to this place, we had this idea that diversity was important. We knew that if we wanted to have beneficial insects here, we needed to go ahead and create a place for them. The idea of hedgerows was a pretty prominent idea, but throughout the farm have established hedgerows and provide you with some habitat and some pollen and nectar for what you want to have in and around your farm. There are times of the year on any farm where there's not a lot of forage for bees or for bumblebees or for, the myriad of bees that might provide you with pollination services. So we can create habitat here for those things that will provide us with services by managing our edges. The hedgerows add complexity and they take our edges and make our edges productive. Places where normally you might just keep it clean and there might not be anything there, but we've allocated space for those other life forms to have something here. That's kind of the idea of why we incorporated hedgerows throughout the farm here. And we have a huge bird population, one of the most remarkable bird populations of any farm that they were on. The number of species is incredibly diverse, and it's because I think we make a place here where they can come and they migrate through and they're here for a certain amount of time, but it's a marker of the practices we're doing right now, and every farmer can do that. There's great farmers in the Midwest who are jumping years ahead of us, who are diversifying their cover crop mix, who are not tilling, who are incorporating livestock, who are doing all these things and growing soil and growing permeability and growing stability. They're capturing more water. They're not having the impacts on what goes into a stream that becomes an environmental issue that farmers then have to modify their practices through regulation. They're figuring out how to get around that stuff because they're thinking more holistically. I think about the long-term impacts of our farm being here. When we got here 38 years ago, the whole agricultural economy here was on something of a decline. And we were one of the few young families here that came. We now have, in this valley, we have more than 50 new farms and young farmers, people who I think have seen the model, have seen what they can do, can see it can be successful. And we've had a number of folks who've been here as interns who are now farming on their own. Some wonderful farmers, and they're around the country. By having opportunity for young people to learn here, they can go to other parts of the country and become farmers. And every farm's unique. Every farm has a different set of environmental conditions, economic constraints, weather conditions, and every farm has a different capacity to do that experimentation. But if you're a beginning farmer, you can go to look at what people are doing. You may not be able to afford the tools that they have, but you can use the ideas and see what they're trying to do and see what the impacts are. And I think you can jump ahead a bit. So the transfer of knowledge is critical. Asking questions is critical.